Questions orales, oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
My mother taught me never to be late, so please forgive me for my late arrival to the session. I had some meetings with extremely important people in East Central Alberta, Mr. Speaker, after which I was honored to be elected by the great people of Battle River Crowfoot. I served in this House. I thank the great Damien Kirk who made it possible, and I thank the Prime Minister for calling a prompt by-election. I wonder if one day he might regret that decision. But in a spirit of good faith, I wonder if he agrees that our goal should be a Canada where hard work is rewarded, where food and homes are affordable, where streets are safe, where borders are solid, and where we're all united under a proud flag.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure I speak for all parliamentarians in welcoming the member for Battle River Crowfoot back to the House of Commons. He may notice a few things have changed since he was here last. The largest women's caucus in Canadian history. And a spirit of collaboration that was shown in the opening session, including in the passage of the Build Canada Act and the projet de loi du Bloc québécois en ce qui concerne du chef de l'opposition pour notre grand.
I was deliberately flexible on time because it's a special day, but now we're going to respect the 35-second limit. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Some things never change. Monsieur le Président.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister mentioned how much had changed, and it's true. I look around this place, and when I left, there was a Liberal Prime Minister who was making excuses about breaking promises, running massive deficits, costs, crime, chaos were all out of control. And whereas today, we have a Liberal Prime Minister breaking promises, making excuses, running massive deficits with costs, crime, and chaos out of control. Mr. Speaker, when will the Prime Minister match the grand promises with the real change Canadians need?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I understand the Minister, or the Minister, promotion. Come on over. I understand the Leader of the Opposition was busy. He missed the largest tax cut for 22 million Canadians. He missed the cut on the GST for new homes. He missed eliminating all federal barriers to trade. He missed, I hope I'll have another opportunity to finish a very long list of what the Leader of Opposition did.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Dans l'esprit non partisan.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this government has been absolutely focused on improving affordability for Canadians. That's why the largest tax cut, 22 million Canadians, every taxpayer in this country. That's why the cut to the GST. That's why the launch of Build Canada Homes, which will reduce the cost of home building in this country. That's why we back the CRTC to get broadband costs down for Canadians. We are building the strongest economy throughout the worst crisis in our history.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
In the spirit of nonpartisanship, we are simply going to hold this Prime Minister to his own promises. He promised that he would spend less. He's already spending 8% more. He promised the budget would be in October. Now he says it will be in November, more than halfway through the fiscal year. He promised that his government would have a smaller deficit than Justin Trudeau. Instead, now we hear that it might even be double. So a trivia question. Can the Prime Minister tell us, has there ever been a Prime Minister who has successfully doubled the deficit without even introducing a budget?
The The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
It's a trick question.
Mr. Speaker, this government is undertaking the biggest investment in protecting Canadians in the Canadian military. Doubling our investment in the Canadian military from last year when this member last sat in the House by the end of this decade. This government, there's more.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
There's a lot more debt is what there is, Mr. Speaker. A lot more debt than we ever imagined would be possible. This is a Prime Minister who said we'd have the fastest growing economy in the G7. We have the fastest shrinking economy in the G7. He said grocery prices would go down. They're going up faster than ever before. He promised to create jobs. He has the second highest unemployment in the G7. He's really reminding us all of that sign at the bar. Free beer tomorrow. But you come back the next day and the beer is still not free, and tomorrow never comes. Mr. Speaker, why is it that all of this Prime Minister's promises of yesterday turn into today's disappointments?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think if we are going to build the strongest economy in the G7, and we will, we need to be clear. We need to be clear about the scale of the crisis we are in. We need to be clear about the scale of investment that we need. $60 billion in new projects announced last week. $200 billion in investment announced last week. $100 billion in housing investment announced just yesterday. That's the scale of what we need.
L'Honorable Député de Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister promised that he would spend less, yet his deficit spending is 100% more than even Justin Trudeau. And what is the real human consequence of that? Food price inflation is rising 70% faster than the Bank of Canada's target. And today, the CEO of the major food bank network in Toronto says that there has been a 400% increase in food bank use there. Does the Prime Minister understand that his empty promises lead to empty stomachs?
Honourable Ministre des Finances.
Mr. Speaker, it's reassuring to hear the Leader of the Opposition that listened to the Prime Minister during the summer. I'm glad to see that he retained that we're going to spend less so we can invest more, Mr. Speaker, and investing more in Canadians. Like, for example, reducing the taxes for 22 million Canadians, Mr. Speaker. Like making sure that people who want a first-time home, buy a first-time home, will pay less in GST, Mr. Speaker. Making sure that we eliminate the consumer carbon tax, Mr. Speaker. I think the leader should celebrate that this government is there for families across Canada to build a stronger and more...
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, he wants us to celebrate his failures, including failures that are leading to real human suffering. Let me quote the CEO of Daily Bread Food Bank, Neil Hetherington. So giving you some context, previously before the pandemic, we were at 600,000 for the year visits to the food bank. And so it took 38 years to get 1 million visits per year, and then only 1 year to get 2 million visits, another year to get 3 million. Now we are at 4 million visits. Food bank lineups are growing and growing at an accelerating rate under this Prime Minister. Does he realize the very real human consequences of his broken Liberal promises?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I'm here to announce some good news. Last night, Canada and British Columbia approved the new Silicon LNG export terminal in northern British Columbia. It's with the Nisga'a Nation. It will be the second largest private sector investment in the history of this country. The second largest in the history of this country. It will employ thousands of Canadians. We would love the Conservatives to help us build Canada.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the question was not about re-announcing a previously approved project. It was about the cost of food. And frankly, Frankly, it is insulting. We have asked 10 questions about the cost of food in the last 2 days, and not a single Liberal minister will get up and answer it. Maybe that's because the inflation rate on food is 70% above the target. Maybe it's because there are now 4 times as many visits to Toronto food banks as there were 3.5 years ago. Maybe it's because they broke their promise to stabilize food prices. Maybe it's because the Prime Minister promised that he could be judged on the price of food. Speaking of which, what's the verdict?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Mr. Speaker, well, I know we're all in this House concerned about the price of food, and we're also concerned about our farmers. The #1 cost of living in Canada is related to housing, Mr. Speaker, and as I mentioned yesterday, people are concerned about housing prices. This government is taking action to make housing more affordable. With Build Canada Homes, with tax cuts, with the first-time home buyers tax cuts, we're making a difference for people in their pocketbooks.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the question was about food prices.
Right.
Yeah.
And he stood up to announce that he's going to be feeding some of his friends who are going to populate this latest $13 billion bureaucracy, a bureaucracy that will build no homes and that will only reward Liberal insiders who, like him, have a record of actually doubling housing costs.
Right.
But back to food, the stuff that needs to go on people's dinner table. We have a record number of people at food banks after the Prime Minister promised to make food more affordable. Doesn't he realize that his promises have real costs for Canadians?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Sport.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a little rich coming from the guy who voted against the National School Food Program, Mr. Speaker. But I would like to say that Food Banks Canada does exceptional work, and they also make good recommendations for government. 1, they suggest we build up Canada's social safety net. 2, they say we should solve the affordable housing crisis, and we should help lower-income workers make ends meet. Mr. Speaker, all of those things are things that Conservative leader votes against time and time in this House.
L'Honorable Député Leader of the Opposition.
How big is the deficit that the Prime Minister is running?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm looking forward with the Minister of Finance to releasing the budget on the 4th of November. That budget will contain the biggest investment in this country's future in a generation.
Hear, hear.
Building homes, building new port infrastructure, new trade corridors, new energy infrastructure, building the strongest economy in the G7.
Hear, hear. Well done.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Surely, if he was such an expert, he would know the size of his own deficit. It's now halfway through the fiscal year. 6 months have gone by, and he has announced $40 billion of additional spending. Deficits drive up inflation, grocery prices, housing costs, and interest rates. They drive out investment from our country and uncertainty that destabilizes our economy. That's why every other Prime Minister in Canadian history has announced the deficit at the beginning of the fiscal year. We're 6 months in. Does he even know the size of his own deficit?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I know many things. And one of the things I know, the member opposite, the Leader of the Opposition, just mentioned interest rates. One thing I know is that Canadian interest rates are much lower than American interest rates. They're lower because this country's fiscal situation is strong, because this government has a plan to grow this economy, and we will keep doing it. We'll keep it going.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, the collapsing economy is bringing down interest rates, but the financial expert doesn't even know what his own deficit is. But another financial expert spoke yesterday. The parliamentary budget officer said the deficit will absolutely be higher because of additional spending. He said he doesn't know what the government's fiscal anchors are because they do not exist. He says the labor market sucks and wages are not going up. These are quotes. Is this why Liberal members on the committee who heard those truth bombs threatened that the Prime Minister would fire the parliamentary budget officer after 166 days?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I don't recognize that, Mr. Speaker. I don't recognize that characterization. I just appointed the parliamentary budget officer, and this government does have fiscal anchors. This government has fiscal anchors. We are going to spend less so the country can invest more. We are going to balance the operational budget in 3 years. We are going to have a declining level of debt, and we're going to do all of that because we're building the strongest economy in the G7 for Canadian families.
That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
And the Prime Minister made the appointment of the parliamentary budget officer temporary so that he could hold a sword over his head and threaten him if he speaks the truth about the financial mess the Prime Minister has made. That's what you remember. You know, to a government that doesn't know how to count, there is nothing more terrifying than a man armed with a calculator. And this Prime Minister wants to silence the parliamentary budget officer from telling the truth about the fiscal mess that he has created under his watch. So will he, Mr. Speaker, legalize math, make the parliamentary budget officer's position permanent, and tell us how big the deficit is?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Monsieur le Président, with respect to consultations on making the parliamentary budget officer's position permanent, I look forward to speaking to the Leader of the Opposition, le chef de Bloc Québécois, the leaders of other parties in Parliament, so we have a consensus on that appointment. I welcome that opportunity. We will do it at this. Yes, because this is the new spirit, Mr. Speaker, the new spirit of collaboration that has been put forward by the Minister.
L'honorable député de Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister is in Mexico today for a photo op and fake agreement, but it's a great opportunity to compare because both countries are neighbors of the United States. In the last quarter, Canada's economy shrunk by 1.6%, while the Mexican economy grew by 2.4%. Wow. The Canadian exports to the United States crashed by 18%, while Mexican exports to the U.S. are up 1.4%. Wow. And the Canadian unemployment rate is 3 times higher than Mexicans. Wow. Will the Prime Minister ask his Mexican friends what they're doing right that he's doing so wrong?
Right. L'honorable ministre de l'Industrie.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister believes in having a strong relationship with Mexico, our second biggest trading partner. That's exactly why he is in Mexico today, meeting with the President to make sure that we can have our trading relationship really on par. Now, the other thing that the Leader of the Opposition needs to understand is that we're living in a much more dangerous and complicated world with trade tensions having impacts on trading partners all around the world. We will stand up for workers, we'll stand up for our businesses, and we'll build Canada strong.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
This is the time in the life cycle of any Liberal government when they go from making promises to making excuses. So they're blaming their collapsing economy on global tensions. But interestingly, Mexico shares the same neighbor as we do. We're both right next door to the Americas, so we can compare performance. But in the most recent quarter, the Mexican economy has actually grown by 2.4%. The Canadian economy down by 1.6%. Our unemployment is three times what theirs is. Why?
Honorable Ministre de l'Industrie.
Mr. Speaker, what is shocking from the Leader of the Opposition comments is always talking down Canadian workers, Canadian businesses, the Canadian economy. You know what? Good news is the Bank of Canada yesterday reduced rates. We should all be celebrating that. This is good news, Mr. Speaker, and we will be there for business businesses in the tariff sectors, including aluminum, steel, auto, copper, and all the other sectors, because we know that these workers are important, these businesses are important, and we have a plan to build Canada strong.
We've had a free trade agreement with Mexico for almost 3 decades. So the Prime Minister is going for nothing more than a photo op, another fake engagement. Just like the minister talks about interest rates, the Bank of Canada said the reason they're cutting rates while inflation is rising is because our economy is collapsing. They promised the fastest growing economy in the G7. They've delivered the fastest shrinking economy in the G7. They promised more home building. It's falling by 13%. They promised to spend less. Their deficit spending is 100% more. You know, talk is cheap, but why is it so expensive when this Prime Minister does it?
L'honorable ministre de l'Industrie.
We know that the leader of the opposition believes in isolationism, which is basically that Canada is by itself in the world. We believe that we need to engage in the world. We need to make sure that Canada is working with trading partners from Mexico, from Europe to Asia. And that is why the Prime Minister will continue to travel to make sure to engage with leaders of this in the world, because we believe that it is the way to build a strong economy at home, save and protect jobs, create new ones, attract foreign direct investments, and ultimately to make sure that Canada's voice of peace and multilateralism is heard in the world.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, we've had free trade agreements with all of those countries and regions for over a decade. And yet the Prime Minister is busy, looking busy, flying around, grip and grin, pretending to do a lot while doing very little. But he could make use of all of that expensive travel by asking all of those other places why their economy is so much stronger than the one that he now leads. He's got, under his leadership, the second highest unemployment in the G7, the worst economic growth in the G7, the worst household debt in the G7, and the worst household debt and housing costs in the G7. Why is it that when he promises to be the first, he's the worst?
The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, as we look at what's happening with global trade headwinds, we need to step up as a country and be there around the world to make sure countries know that we are here. They want to deal with a reliable, stable trading partner. It's our 15 free trade agreements with 51 different countries, access to 1.5 billion consumers that countries rely on, that Canadian workers rely on. That's why the Prime Minister will be there to make sure we're opening up new markets for Canadian businesses and workers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, these aren't new markets. The member might have been asleep. Actually, he seems like a very young man. Maybe he wasn't born when Brian Mulroney negotiated NAFTA with the Mexicans. Maybe the Prime Minister was sleeping the day Conservatives negotiated a free trade agreement with the Europeans. He's going around taking credit for things that he never did while his economy collapses here at home. Canadians cannot eat, heat, or house themselves. Will the Prime Minister stop making excuses, taking fake trips, and get down to his job?
The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, I won't go to personal attacks as the member opposite has. We'll focus on the facts. There's people watching in the gallery. I think it's very important to note that Canada and Mexico share over 30 years of strong friendship and economic partnerships rooted in trust and trade and mutual respect. In fact, Canadian direct investment in Mexico was over $45 billion in 2024. The Prime Minister will be meeting with President Sheinbaum to defend our industries and grow our economies, Mr. Speaker. Canada is committed to CUSMA, and we're actively collaborating with Mexico, and that's why the Prime Minister is there to make sure.
L'honorable député de Saint-Jean.